Hello dear students, welcome to our discussion on phylum Hemichordata. We are going to take the example of Belanoglossus to discuss the salient features of this particular phylum Hemichordata. So this particular phylum, the Hemichordata, the word means hemi, which means half, and chorda, which means chord, or which refers to chordata, or they are referred to as half chordates. Till recently, these were treated as a subphylum of the phylum Chordata or Protochordata, but now it is being regarded as an independent phylum of invertebrates close to Echinodermata. These include deuterostome animals with enterocoelous coelom, gill slits, and a buccal diverticulum. And this buccal diverticulum, which was present in this group of organisms, were previously considered to be the notochord. But now it is proved that it does not have any origin or any features of a true notochord. They also have a vermiform body, which is usually divisible into a proboscis, a collar, and a tongue. So these usually, or the hemichordates usually include a small group of marine primitive chordates, and commonly they are called as acorn worms or tongue worms. So we'll directly move on to the salient features. So from this diagram, you will be knowing why these were called as acorn worms. So these are called as acorn worms because of their the proboscis has a very structural similarity to the acorn seeds of oak trees. That's why these worms are commonly called as acorn worms. And coming to the next common term, they are also usually Belanoglossus is also called as tongue worm. They are called as tongue worms because the proboscis, if you take the proboscis, the collar, and this this region is called as genital wings. We'll come to that later, the speciality of these structures, etc. So if you take these three, the entire structure, if you see here, it is much more broader region and then tapering towards a proboscis, and that has and that particular structure resembles the tongue, and that is why these are also called as tongue worms. And if you see the term Belanoglossus, Belanos means acorn nut because of the similarity with the proboscis, and glossus means the shape of the tongue, which is due to the combined structure of the genital wings, the collar, and the pointed proboscis. So as we said, they are deuterostome animals with enterocoelous coelom, pharyngeal gill slits, and a buccal diverticulum. And this buccal diverticulum were previously considered as notochord, and they were previously classified under chordates, but now it is being proved that this particular structure, the buccal diverticulum, does not have any similarity or does not have any relation to a true notochord, and that is why now they have reclassified them under or very close to the last invertebrate phylum, which is Echinodermata. So coming to the habit and habitat of this particular worms. So if you see the structure, describing in structure, anteriorly it is having the acorn shaped proboscis, which is followed by a collar, and you have the largest portion of the body, which is called as a trunk. The trunk is again divisible into different regions, and these regions are the first region, this particular region, this region is called as the brachiogenital region. So the two terms brachio and genital, it is because of these two structures, the brachial as well as the genital structures are present in this particular region. That is why this region is called as brachiogenital region. So if you see the middle portion contains the gill slits, the minute gill slits. And these gill slits, they are microscopic and that cannot be seen through the visible eye, but a ridge can be seen passing through the center of the body, and that ridge contains the gill slits. And you can see these are wing-like structures on both sides, and they can be closed they can close that particular region. This is like a flap which can be closed and opened, etc. And these flaps on both sides are called as the genital wings, and these genital wings contains the gonads. In Balanoglossus, the sexes are separate. As a result, if it is a male worm, it will have the male gonad, and if it is a female worm, it will have the female gonad with the gonopores to release the either the sperm or the egg. So this is the particular region which is called as the brachiogenital region, this middle portion or the starting portion of the trunk. Followed by this brachiogenital region, you have this particular region where you can see many structural protrusion like structures, and this is called as the hepatic region. So this particular region is called as the hepatic region because the main function of this particular group of structures or protrusions are mainly responsible for intracellular digestion. These particular structures, they have dual role. They do the function of the liver, that's why they are called as the hepatic region, and also they do the function of pancreas. They have a dual function. And followed by this, from here till this end, the structure of the trunk, this region is called as the intestinal region, where absorption etc happens of digested food, and this ends in something which is called as the anus. So this is a general to describe the general structure of our acorn worm or Balanoglossus. So coming to its habit, usually this, as we said earlier, these are vermiform with unsegmented body. It is having a proboscis collar as well as a trunk, and these are marine worms. Marine worms, which usually are seen in burrows or shallow region of the seas. So usually they build, either they conceal them under stones or seaweeds, or they build a burrow. So if they are building a burrow, the burrows are usually U-shaped burrows with two vertical limbs. That means it will be in the form of a U. We'll see that structure here. So this is the burrow of an Balanoglossus. You can see this is the U-shaped burrow with two vertical limbs, and you can see that this is the anterior region. Anterior means the region where the head of the Balanoglossus can be seen. That is called as the anterior region. And another different distinguishing feature of the anterior region is that in the anterior region the openings are funnel shaped. And in most cases, the anterior opening will be branched. There will be more opening in the anterior vertical region or the anterior segment of the this vertical structure of the U-shaped burrow. So there will be many accessory anterior openings will be there, which are also called as a branching. So to differentiate from the anterior and posterior, the anterior opening will be funnel shaped and it will be having branches. You can see an Balanoglossus inside. This is the head region. You can see the proboscis here, and this is the tail region. You can see the anus here. And another thing that is shown here is you can easily identify. You cannot see this funnel shaped structure. You can just see only an opening from outside in the seashore, but this thing will be visible clearly, and this is nothing but the casting of this Balanoglossus. So at the posterior end, this particular burrow or this U-shaped burrow will be concealed by the worm by its casting or worm casting, which comes out through the anus, and this is the worm casting which can be seen at the posterior end. So something about 15 to 20 meters, 20 centimeters apart, you can see you can see these either these openings, one, two or three openings can be seen. So this is the burrow which is built by the our acorn worm or Balanoglossus or the tongue worm. Another feature of this burrow is that when this burrow is built by this particular worm, by the mechanism same as we see in annelids like earthworms. they will be swallowing the sand. They will be moving by swallowing the sand through the part they move, and that is the same mechanism of that is a mechanism by which they feed. They ingest the organic materials that is present in the sand while they are moving. And there are cilia which are present, or there are great number of cilia which are present on the proboscis, which also helps them in feeding, or which helps them in feeding the anterior, the proboscis region. Uh, and the next thing to mention in this burrow is that when they move or when they create a burrow, what they do is that they secrete their mucus in the entire through the entire body wall, and that mucus will stick together and cement the sand in the burrow. As a result, the burrow becomes strong and that will not be fragile. The burrow cannot be the burrow can withstand the water, etc. As a result, it will not be destroyed. So coming to the two vertical limbs and anterior funnel shaped opening which may be branched, the posterior round will be concealed by the spirally coiled fecal matter. Sand particles are usually cemented by the help of mucus, which prevent the burrow from collapsing. Another important feature is that they secrete a foul smelling odor which is similar to the iodoform, and this is to escape from a mechanism to escape from the predators. So here we'll see the live Balanoglossus. So that is the Balanoglossus. Here you can see. Okay, they are usually seen in the shallow sea waters. That's a starfish. Here you can see, so this is the acron worm, this is the proboscis region in this particular portion, which is followed by the collar, the genital ridge in the intestine, and the you can see the anus. So this is the proboscis, which is followed by the collar, and this region is the trunk. So this is what is they are digging up the burrow. So that is a U-shaped burrow. You can see how strong it is, how cemented it is. So you can see again. So they are digging it, they are taking up the U-shaped burrow. You can see the U-shaped sting, still it retains that U-shaped structure. So they are smelling the Balanoglossus. As we said, it will have an order of an iodoform order, and that is throughout the body. They will have this iodoform smell, and that is to escape from the predators. That is mainly meant for predator escaping from the predators. So the proboscis is the most active part of its body. It can be elongated and shortened with which is helping in burrowing. The feeding is similar to that of earthworms. That means it will be feeding on the sand while it is burrowing, and it will be taking in the organic matter which is present in that, either the mud or the debris. Mouth is ventral in position, which is situated at the junction of the proboscis and the collar. Anus is present at the hind end of the trunk. The coelom extends in all the three parts of the body. That means the proboscis is having, as we said, they are having an enterocoelous type of coelom, and it is said that there are 4 sacs which is present, or 4. It is produced as 5 outpushings, coelomic sac. 1 sac is present in the proboscis, 2 is present in the collar, and 2 is present in the trunk region. Another main feature, or a unique feature, is the presence of buccal diverticulum. So now we will see what is the buccal diverticulum. So this buccal diverticulum, which is considered to be previously considered to be the notochord, this is present in the proboscis region. It can be seen in the proboscis region. It is a short, stiff, hollow, thick-walled projection which extends into the proboscis coelom from the roof of the buccal cavity. For a long time, it was considered as a notochord, but histologically and developmentally, it is different from true notochord. And because of this particular consideration, because it was considered as a notochord, they were previously placed in phylum Chordata, but when that was disproved, they were replaced or recategorized or reclassified under invertebrata. The trunk is divisible into as we said, it is divisible into the brachiogenital, the hepatic and posterior abdominal region, which is the intestinal region, and the anus. So along the length of the trunk, there is two ridges on dorsally. You can see. So this is the ridge mid dorsally. This is the ridge. And ventrally also you can see the ridge, which accommodates the corresponding blood vessels, nerves, etc. So if you see this, it's the structures will be more clearer. So this is the proboscis region. And the proboscis region, as we said, it contains a cilia for feeding. This can be extended, elongated, and also it can be retracted. So this fold-like skin, starting from here, this till this tip is the collar region. Okay, and from the collar, if you move downwards, you can see the moving down from the collar. Okay, you can see. So this is the genital wings. They have pinned the genital wings. Actually, it is a flap. This is the brachial region containing the gill pores. You can see the genital, the gonads here in the genital wings. So this is that particular portion, and from here it starts. This is a smaller worm, I guess. Here, from here, you can see the trunk region. Okay, you can see the trunk region. These are the hepatic structures. Here it is borne out. These are the hepatopancreatic structures, and these smaller linings, these are the intestinal cells. Okay, these are the hepatic cells, which is followed by the smaller ones. Starting from here, you can see the intestinal cells, which will terminate in the anus. So this is the opening, which is called as the anus. So this is the structure or the external morphology of Balanoglossus. So coming to the other salient features, the digestive system consists of the mouth, the pharynx, intestine, the hepatic ceca, as we saw in the video, as well as in the structures, and the anus. The circulatory system consists of sinuses, lacunae, and blood vessels. Nitrogenous waste is eliminated by a proboscis gland, which is present in the proboscis near the stomochord or the brachial, the otherwise called as the buccal diverticulum. The respiratory system consists of the upper respiratory region, which opens out dorsally by the gill slits. The nervous system show resemblance to echinoderms on one hand, and the dorsal region in some area which resembles to that of the chordates. The sexes are separate. They have the eggs or the sperms are released by the individuals into the seawater, and external fertilization takes place. Development is indirect with the Tornaria larva, and these are having their power of regeneration. They have the power of regeneration where if any part, especially if the head region is cut off, the entire collar, the head, the proboscis, etc. can be regenerated. They are having an extraordinary power of regeneration. So this is with the salient features or the salient features or the structural features of Balanoglossus or phylum Hemichordata. Coming to the affinities, as we said, because their classification was very difficult, because first they were put in chordates and then it was reclassified, etc. They show many affinities, similarities with other invertebrate phylum, etc. So we'll see the important affinities with other invertebrate phyla as well as the chordates, and also the evolutionary significance or the systematic position of Balanoglossus. So first we will see the affinities of Annelida. First is, as we said, as we saw in the picture, etc. They are having a vermiform body and they are coelomate, which is a similarity with annelids. They have burrowing habit, then tuberculous life because they live in burrows, and they are same as that of earthworms. They ingest mud. The collar is similar to that of Clitellum, which is present in earthworms. They are having a dorsal heart. The circulation and the arrangement of blood vessels are similar to that of the annelids. Both have the similar type of larva with ciliary bands and eye spots. The structures which are present in the larva is similar. Coming to the differences, so differences in the sense that even though they are having these much similarities, why they were not classified under Annelida? That is because of these particular differences. The annelids do not have gill slits and a buccal diverticulum. As a result, you cannot put them completely into Annelida. The Balanoglossus do not have a double and a solid ventral nerve cord. So these features exempt them from being classified under Annelida. Coming to the affinities with Echinodermata, the enterocoelic origin of coelom, then similarity with the larva with similar larva with ciliary band, the transparent structure, the oval shape, and the proboscis spore, etc. similar. They have common habit because they are bottom dwellers. They have a dorsal heart, a remarkable power of regeneration that is also shown by many of the echinoderms. Then resemblance in the proteins and phosphagens which is present. So these are the similarities with Echinodermata. The main difference is the adults are much different because the adults of hemichordates, they are vermiform, but the other one with mostly bilateral symmetry, but that with echinoderms, most of the echinoderms, they are having radial symmetry, and some sensory hairs, some of the specialized sensory hairs which is seen in the larva of echinoderms is absent in the case of is absent in the Echinodermata larva. So coming to the chordate, similarities with the chordate. So they are having the enterocoelic development of the coelom, then a dorsal hollow nerve cord, and the presence of gill slit. So these are the similarities with chordate. Coming to the differences, the absence of a true notochord. They are having only a buccal diverticulum. The nervous system is of invertebrate type. Gill slits are dorsal rather than lateral in the case of chordates. Another major difference is that even though they are having the gill slits, in chordates the number of gill slits is limited to 5 to 7 pairs. But if you see that of Balanoglossus, the number of gill slits are varying. It varies with the age of the worm. Then lack of cephalization, the metameric segmentation, paired appendages, post-anal tail, etc. are the differences why we do not classify them as chordates. So these are the affinities with the two major group of invertebrata, and the other one, the phylum Chordata. So coming to the evolutionary significance, so seeing the affinities and the similarities and differences, the close affinity with Annelida and Echinodermata and chordate have led to the conclusion that all these are having a common ancestor, or they arise from a common ancestral stock. And from the ancestral stock, what happened is that they had a common ancestor. The hemichordates arose from the ancestral stock after the divergence of Echinodermata, but before the rise of true chordates. So they had a common ancestor. From the common ancestor, first our Echinodermata diverged in another direction, and this one our Echinodermata diverged in another direction, and the chordates, they arose after the hemichordates formed from the ancestral line. That's why they're having some affinities as well as some differences. So with this, we come to the end of this particular session, which is the phylum Hemichordata. Thanks for hearing.